Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Keep Up with Pryme. I'm Laura from Marketing, and I'm joined by Aske Holz, Product Manager at Pryme Global. Today, we'll be taking a closer look at the enhancements across our apps that are relevant to the construction industry. Should you have any questions along the way, please use the chat or the Q&A section, and we will take a look at those at the end of the presentation. And now, over to you, Aske. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Today we will be looking at some new features that we have released over the last 3 months. And this covers anything related to construction. And let's dive into it. So first of all, we've structured this based on the different phases of a project life cycle. So setup, planning, work, invoicing, etc. And starting out with the setup area, we have a new feature related to project creation, which is dependency in task templates. So as you all might know, we have the capability to do planning on projects in a Gantt chart with dependencies. What we've added now is the capability to predefine those dependencies and have that in a task template. So if I open up my task templates, I can select one here and I can look at the template lines. I have a task template. In this case, it is a number of different tasks: detailed design, procurement, construction, client handover. And the new thing is that I can define a default duration. So I could say, well, the feasibility should be on average 2 days. Design is 5 days, procurement is 5, or let's say actually it's 10 days. Same for construction, maybe that's 15 days. And client handover is 5 days. Then we can set how they are connected. In this case, the detailed design is connected to the feasibility. We cannot start on design before we've done feasibility. Procurement is connected to detailed design, and client handover is connected to construction. There can even be an offset here where we say we have to wait a couple of days from finishing the construction until we can do the client handover and so on. So you can add in some lead time or some waiting time in between. With this in place, whenever I create a project and add tasks to it, it will use this by default. So that could be using one of the guided experiences. I could also do this by creating a project manually and adding the task later. I could even do it on a project I had already created, and when I add tasks, that doesn't matter. As soon as I add the tasks from a template, those dependencies will also be added. So if I add tasks from a template, I use my construction template, and let's say in this case all tasks, I will see that I get those times and dependencies. Now, we don't see this in the project subform because this just looks the normal way. But if I open up the Gantt chart, we will see that we now have a timeline on this that is connected with dependencies. So that makes it very easy to construct a standard template for a project and the relations in it. Next up, we have contracts. So if you're working with contracts, we have the capability to add projects to the contracts. In the past, you always had to go via the project and add it to the contract, or you could do it in some scenarios when creating the project. What we've changed is that you can now go via contracts and open up that contract, and from there you can select the projects. So before, you could look at the related projects and see here we have one related project on this line. Now I can also go into assign related projects and say I would also like this project to be related. I can see the ones that are already connected. So these already connected. I would like to also assign this one. So I assign this, and so now this is also connected. And well, maybe we'll also connect this one as well. So now this is also connected. So it's very easy to connect up projects to contracts. That should make it a lot easier to work with contracts. Then we have the area of resources. This is not really connected to projects, but of course, we have to have resources in order to work with projects, because resources in most projects is one of the key components. That could be human resources or machine resources. What is new is we've added the feature to copy existing resources or copy existing users and their associated resource. We've added resource templates. So if you're creating new resources from scratch, you can have a resource template. You can also save a resource as a template. You can import resources. And lastly, there are some group updates I'll look at the end. So going into the resources, I can take a resource in here. Let's take Cassie as an example. She's one of our resources. And I can look at the actions in here, and I can see that I have a copy user resource functionality. So I can copy Cassie to a new resource. I can also do this more in batch from the setup menu. So from under resources, there is a, let's see, or is it under processing? Resources? No, that's import. Sorry about that. Okay, it does exist in multiple places. The idea is you can go in and you can say copy, and then you can decide, do you want to, how much do you want to copy? Should I copy both the user and the resource, or just the resource? You can set some information on the new copy and what should be the new job title, what is the email. Should we copy the project permissions? Should we copy the prices? Should we copy dimensions? If we want to have timesheets automatically created, we can put in information on how far into the future, if we should update capacity, how far in the future, etc., etc. So you can do all of these in one go. So it should make it a lot easier to set up new resources. If you have a lot of resources to set up, and that could be in an early phase of a project implementation, you can again use the import functionality where you can create a whole list of resources to be created. Maybe in Excel, you have it here, and then you can apply that and have all those resources created in a quick way. Lastly, we have the template option where you can create a resource template, or you can create multiple resource templates. So let's create a new template for a project manager. And you can say, well, if it is a project manager I'm creating, it should be marked as a project manager. The unit of measure should probably be hour, and it should be in the resource group of project managers, etc. So you pre-fill this as a template, just like you would a project template or any other template. And then when you go to create a new resource, it will ask you what template to use. So if I say new resource, it'll say, hey, do you want to use this PM template? I might say, yeah, well, I would like to do that. You can also just skip it. It'll only ask you if you have templates, of course. And if I say, yes, PM template, that's perfect, then it applies those settings that were in the template. So again, making it easier to create resources and users as well. In the planning area, we have two new features I think are worth mentioning. In the work planning, we have added work item categories. So if you ever worked with regular items, there are item categories. Now we have work item categories that are for our work items. And so just a friendly reminder here, what are work items? Well, the work items is when we use the work planning to plan out our work. I have some work planned for me, a site survey, installing of a panel, inspection of a panel. And what we added here is the capability to categorize these with categories. Now, I don't have any work item categories yet, but they're easy to set up. So I search for work item categories, and I get a list, and I can create a new category. So maybe the new category is survey. And of course, I would have a number of different other categories. I can select that. And that makes it possible to do reporting and filtering and so on based on the categories if you only want to look at a certain category at a time. The other feature is budgets, where we can now have a direct import from Excel. So if I go back in here and I open up a project, I can have a project, and of course I can work with a budget journal in here. Let me just create a budget journal very quickly. And within that budget journal, I can of course add entries. The new thing is that you can create an import template that is an Excel sheet that you can then fill out. And within that, you can then have all your data, maybe from somewhere else. It just defines a format. It is a number of columns, the same columns as you see in the page. And then you save that, and then you can import that Excel sheet again. So similar to the import functionalities we have in the journal, create a template, fill it in, import it back in. You can still, of course, use the edit in Excel and other features, copy and paste and so on. But for some scenarios, having a dedicated import function makes it a lot easier. Next up, we have, sorry, that was a bad jump. In the area of time, we have added some new features. One of them is a time tracker, and currently it is released for Windows. Now, working on a desktop, so that might be any staff that is in the office working on this. But I think from a forward-looking perspective, it is even more interesting because we will release this for mobile devices as well, so we get a really good mobile experience. So the way it works is I will drag this on. I have this running already, so it looks something like this. This is the tracker. It is a small window. It might be a bit small to see, but that's kind of the idea, that you would run it quite small. And in here, I can track time on something. So I could say, well, I would like to add an entry. What am I working on? I'm having a meeting, and it's already tracking my time. I can, of course, say, well, this is for this project. It's for a certain task and so on. And that's all I need to do. Now it's tracking my time. So this can stay alive all the time. You can have it in the background and just keep going. It doesn't have to take up too much space. And at some point you're done, you pause it again, and then you start something else and it tracks it. And this, of course, then is an alternative to doing your tracking inside the PC web client. And as I'll mention when we get to the roadmap, we will also have this as an iPhone and Android app as well, so you can use this immediately to track your time very easily with a nice interface on it. The next feature is geo-tagging. So this is something that we have added specifically for construction. And the idea here is that you can define that you want tagging on your entries. This is an opt-in feature. So if I open up Pryme Time Setup, I can specify that I want to use geo-tagging. And if I do that, then time entries and time tracking entries will be tagged with the coordinates of the location where the user was when entering that time. Of course, again, for desktop use, it doesn't matter much because usually people are sitting in the same place, but for mobile use, and this works already today in the Business Central mobile app, if you're using that and you're putting on geo-tagging, then all the time entries created will have the coordinates. And then you can correlate that with a site address and see if people were actually on site or what site they were on. If they tracked on the wrong project, they tracked on a project for in London, and the coordinate shows that they were actually in Manchester. Okay, we have some information to work off there, or maybe it's not that far between, but that's a geo-tagging feature. Then we have a feature related to purchasing. We've had purchase retention for a long time, and this has now been extended. So you can use purchase retention manually on any kind of purchase document. Doesn't matter if it's an invoice or an order or quote. You can use it anywhere. So outside the feature of being able to use retention from subcontracts, you can simply go in and create a purchase invoice, a purchase order, and you can add retention to that to retain a certain amount. And you will see that on the line that there is a field for purchase retention percentage. Let's see if I can. Seems like I've hidden that one, but we can add it in. And then we should be able to see the retention percentage. I'll add that in. And so we can see in this case it is 10%, but I could change it to something different. It could also just be a blank invoice where I set it on. And then in the end, I need to, if I want to see the actual retention, then I can go ahead and create and calculate that retention. So there's a calculate retention if you want to see it before posting. So that might be nice. In the area of AP automation, there's a few new features. We've had a feature for some time that allows you to create a new vendor based on incoming documents. So if you have a vendor invoice coming and it's a vendor you haven't set up, we can automatically create a new vendor. We've extended that to also allow you to create new vendor bank accounts. On purchase invoices that are coming through automation, rounding has sometimes been an issue where rounding can have different rules and you want to make sure you get a good match. So we've allowed you to set up different rules for rounding for different scenarios. So that rounding will fit with the accepted or expected rounding in that scenario. Moving over to invoicing and WIP, we have in invoice creation and actually on ledger entries in general, the capability to close lines. That has always been there. But sometimes mistakes happen. And we've now added an undo feature. So if I open up a project in here, I'll open up the ledger entries, we will see that I can select a ledger entry here and I can say close invoice lines. This means that we will do a write-off and we will not invoice it. So if I say close invoice lines, it closes this. This is not new. But the new thing is that we have the undo closed line functionality that will undo that again. So if you happen to close lines that should not have been closed, you can now undo it. In intercompany, and that is, of course, only for the companies that have multiple companies in the group and are using intercompany features. We have added a capability to transfer binary data. In reality, that means images, documents, that kind of more rich data. That could either be on master data, so that could be images on items or pictures on resources. Where we see the most application is for transferring document attachments. And there is a predefined workflow or an intercompany flow for transferring project ledger entries, and we now add the capability to also transfer document attachments with those. One caveat that has nothing to do with intercompany is, of course, if you start to transfer large amounts of big files to multiple places, the amount of data grows and you have to be aware of that. But that is just the way with binary data. It is often big. Lastly, within subcontracting, and here we are talking about the time and material-based subcontracting, not the more elaborate subcontract concepts. We have added approval workflows and the ability to auto-create self-billing invoices. The approval workflow needs to be enabled as a workflow. If you don't do that, then it will work just as usual. So if I have my subcontractor statements, I haven't enabled any workflows, I can just select approve on this and it is auto approved. If I want workflow for my subcontractor statements, I must go into my workflow templates, and in here I can find my subcontract approval workflow. If I cannot find it, you must select to reset your templates. That will ensure that it re-updates all the workflow templates that you have, and then you get that template available. It might take a short while, but then you have that, and now I have a Pryme subcontractor statement approval workflow, and I can use that to create a new workflow based on. Within this workflow, there are some rules about who will do the approval. We have added some extra features. They are described in the documentation, so you can control who will do the approval if that is based on the project or the vendor, etc. But this is following the standard rules for approval workflows within Business Central. And so if you create this as a workflow and enable it, then you must have approvals on your subcontractor statements. So that is about what we have in this release and what we've done in the previous few releases. Let's have a quick look at what is coming. So this is the roadmap for the future. We still have a few things left to do in Q2. We are almost at the end of Q2, but there's a few things coming here. I think one of the things coming, and I'll actually switch to the next slide because the next one is more focused on construction. That is the risk management. We have a risk management app being worked on, and hopefully we can release it soon. That will allow you to create a risk register and track risks on projects and give those a score based on likelihood and impact, and then you can categorize them. There's a risk matrix, so you can visualize it. You can set who's responsible to review it, when it should be reviewed next time, etc. So it's a full risk management app. And to begin with, we are focusing on risks on projects, and then we will extend it to also track vendor risk, fixed asset risk, client risk, etc. So I think this will be very useful for risk management in general in Business Central. And this will be included with the construction industry package. Looking further out, there are some new budgeting features where we can have more specific control over changes in budgets and have approval of those. Also have comments to the budget changes coming. Alerts when we're exceeding budgets when creating a purchase order. So for instance, we budgeted for 10,000 for something, we're raising a purchase order for 12, that will create an alert. Within work planning, we will have required skills, meaning you could set on a project task that this task requires certain skills. And so when you create work items for it, those required skills will also apply to the work items, so you don't assign work to somebody who is not skilled to do that work. We'll add some online training, and there will be a new concept of work sets, which is a collection of work items that should always be included with a project. In purchasing, again, there is more for AP automation. We will have a tighter connection between the CAS or RCT scheme with the AP automation, so we can correlate the amount. We will align with some of the withholding taxes features in BC28, and also align the PO matching with the BC standard PO matching, because we now have PO matching in Pryme AP automation, but it works slightly different than the BC standard. And BC standard has made a number of changes in version 28. There is a small feature coming, but I think it will be very useful when you need it. We will allow you to update dimensions on project ledger entries, similar to the feature added in Standard Business Central that allows you to update dimensions on general ledger entries. And then again, some further features for the risk management. One of them is trying to introduce some co-pilot features to help you identify new risks. And then when we look further, we will do even more for work planning, make it possible to do capacity planning for work. And within the time tracking, we're looking at the mobile version of that standalone time tracker. So that should give you a really great experience for people on site who just wants to open their mobile and see, what am I assigned to work on today? Yes, I'm on site, check in, and then of course, when you leave again, you check out. But I'm really looking forward to that one. Also on that timeline, we have multi-day time tracking. So for those working shift work across midnight, it will be easier to track that shift as one continuous piece of work within the tracker. So that could be road works at night or something similar, where you're starting before midnight, but you're ending after midnight. And again, some more features within the purchase area, support for e-invoices in Pebble format, the payable agent support, and a better integration in this kind it is with the subcontract management with some better matching on the statements. So this is what we have on the roadmap.